Ecuador is at war with drug gangs. The South American country declared what it called an internal armed conflict after gunmen took over a TV studio and launched a series of attacks. Fighting intensified after a top gang leader escaped from prison on Sunday, prompting a 60-day state of emergency. Here's what's caused Ecuador's wave of violence and what's at stake for the region and the US as gangs fight for control of lucrative cocaine trafficking routes.
Ecuador has been going through a surge of violence over the last 3 or 4 years. It's gone from one of the safest countries in Latin America to one of the most violent, and that's due to the drug trade. On Sunday, what happened is that a lot of the drug gangs, their leaders are located in the prisons, and one of the leaders of one of the biggest gangs in Ecuador escaped from prison on Sunday. That prompted a response from the new president, Daniel Noboa, who issued a state of emergency and sent in law enforcement to try to take control of the prisons. A day after that happened, on Tuesday, another gang members took over a TV station in Guayaquil, the country's biggest city. Then across the country, really, there was different incidents that occurred, kind of car bombs, police were kidnapped. It seemed like a very coordinated response to the government to try to send a message. President Daniel Noboa, who's only been in office since November, he declared an internal armed conflict in Ecuador. So what that practically means is that the military will now have a greater role in trying to improve security. So basically the gangs become military targets. The soldiers are able to try to neutralize them. The root of this wave of violence is an increasing drug trade. Drugs flowing in from Colombia, mainly that are going up to Europe and the United States. They are now moving into Ecuador. A lot of the cocaine production in Colombia is on the border with Ecuador. The security experts say that it's actually easier for Colombian gangs to move the drugs into Ecuador rather than straight out of Colombia. Ecuador has really good roads, has really good infrastructure, has little security at the ports. Ecuador also is a dollarized economy. So that makes it easier for drug gangs to launder their money into the country. And that has, attracted a lot of attention from international cartels, Mexican cartels, Albanian cartels, for example. And it has provided a lot more resources for the local gangs who are now controlling this. At the same time, a key factor in this violence has been the government's inability to control what happens inside the prisons. The prisons have become the headquarters, and the de facto headquarters for the gangs, where they operate with immunity from inside. Security experts will say that what needs to be done, the first thing needs to be done, is that the government needs to take back control of the prisons. Without that, it's very difficult to weaken the gangs and to reduce the violence. Longer term, it's an issue of how to deal with the international drug trade. And then, that involves the US, Europe, Colombia, Mexico. Several Latin American countries right now are struggling with increased crime. Ecuador is, I think, the most, startling example of that by far.